Hey guys, tonight we slip back in time, not into a royal court, not into a castle tower, but right into a low, smoky room with one window the size of a dinner plate. You lie curled on a thin sack of straw. The hearth beside you has long since gone cold, but the stone still breathes the ghost of heat. Dust clings to the air, stirred by your slow breath. A chicken shuffles somewhere nearby. This isn't a museum. This is your bedroom. The good news: you're technically alive. The bad news: you probably won't survive this century, let alone this lifestyle. But you do have one medieval superpower: falling asleep hard, and staying asleep deep when the day's over. You go down like a stone in a well. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The straw pokes through the fabric as you shift. It's itchy. It always is. The stuffing barley husks. Mostly. With a few generous clumps of whatever got swept off the tavern floor, makes this thing less a bed and more a sack that tolerates your spine. You don't get a pillow. You don't even get the whole bed. You share this one with your younger brother, who kicks like a horse in his sleep. Still, you're thankful. This particular sack is on the floor right next to the hearth. It's the warmest spot in the house, reserved for either the sick or the lucky. You're the latter. For once, above you, wooden beams creak. The loft is low, in better homes. You'd be sleeping up there, but your parents keep onions, firewood, and salted fish up top. You live under the pantry. Sleep has to work around practicality. You're wearing most of your wardrobe, which isn't saying much. A linen shift, woolen hose, a rough tunic that smells of the barn. Medieval peasants don't undress for bed mostly because it's freezing, partly because clothes are too rare to risk wrinkling, and besides, you can't wash anything often. A dry shift is worth more than a fresh one. Outside, it's pitch black, not the city black, where streetlights glow like stars on the ground. This is absolute. Swallow you whole darkness. Your eyes don't adjust. They submit. The moonlight, when it bothers to show up, slips through the wall's cracks like a guilty secret. You can hear the night, though. The drip of water into a wooden pail. The grunt of the pig turning in its stall. The soft hiss of wind pushing through the thatch above. Somewhere, in another cottage, a dog barks once, then silence again. Deep and solid. You adjust your head, settling the bunched-up cloth you call a pillow beneath your neck. It's stuffed with hay, too, but flatter, less lumpy. A luxury by comparison. Some households had to sleep directly on the dirt floor. In fact, sleeping rough wasn't a metaphor, it was Wednesday. The air smells like smoke and old potatoes. But you don't notice anymore. It's just what life smells like. In winter. You might go a full month without stepping more than a few feet from this very bed. That's not laziness. That's survival. Historians still argue whether peasants truly lived indoors all winter, or just ducked in to warm up, but you live in the shadows of the hearth, because there's nowhere else to go. By the way, You're not alone in the room, not even close. Your whole family shares this single-room home. You, your parents, your siblings, a grandfather who won't stop snoring, and a baby who may or may not be teething. There's no quiet time. There's just hope no one rolls over on your face. The family pig sleeps by the door. She grunts occasionally in her sleep, probably dreaming of acorns. She gives off a welcome warmth, though you try not to think too hard about the fleas and the fire out. You don't leave a hearth burning through the night, not unless you want to risk burning the whole village. Embers glow faintly under a pile of ash, like the memory of warmth. Sleep comes when it comes, and it usually does fast. Not because the bed is good, or the room is quiet, but because your body has been used like a tool since sunrise. You've walked miles, carried hay, dug through frost-hardened soil, squatted to milk goats, hauled water, swung an axe, argued with a donkey, been kicked by that same donkey. You're done. Even the discomfort of straw poking your shoulder blades doesn't register anymore. Your brain hits the off switch, and it's lights out. Here's something odd in most peasant homes. The bed wasn't even a permanent object during the day. You'd roll up your sack and push it aside to sweep or sit. That thing you sleep on. It's more like a sleeping bag with chores. We tend to romanticize the past, but no one romanticized sleeping arrangements in the Middle Ages. They were bad, even for nobles. Beds were creaky, lumpy, and shared. Here's your fringe fact of the night in some households. Straw beds were literally changed once a year on Christmas Eve. Happy holidays. You get fresh hay. Try not to sneeze it into your soup. And yes, the straw harbors bugs, lice, fleas, maybe the occasional adventurous beetle. People developed a tolerance to it, or at least a quiet resignation. You didn't complain about sleep. You were grateful you weren't outside, sleeping in the snow, listening to wolves. And yes, there were wolves. No, not just a scary bedtime story. Actual, living wolves, prowling the forests, slinking near the edges of settlements. You'd hear them sometimes in the dead of winter, howling in packs that made your skin tighten. That's why your pig sleeps inside. You wonder if tonight will be another full sleep or if you'll wake up halfway through and sit by the embers for a while. Like you did last week. You don't even question it. It's just what people do. But we'll get to that strange habit next. For now, your body is heavy. Heavier than anything else you've carried today. Your thoughts slow. The last thing you hear is the pig exhaling in a long, contented grunt. Sleep comes, not perfectly, not cleanly, but deeply. And that, friend, is enough. You wake up in the dark. Not the kind of waking where you bolt upright from a nightmare or gasp for breath. It's gentler, natural, like a tide pulling back. For a moment, you're disoriented. The fire's gone cold, and the air has that particular sharpness that suggests it's sometime between late night and early dawn. There's no clock, no glowing numbers, just a gut instinct. Something your body knows from years of living with the rhythms of the land and sky. You don't panic. You just lie there, eyes open, listening. Welcome to the world of segmented sleep, also known as first and second sleep. You've just finished your first sleep. a period that usually runs from sunset until around midnight. Now you're in the gap, the watch, a medieval liminal space where time moves slowly and quietly, and the village exhales in one long breath. Historians still argue whether this sleeping pattern was universal or seasonal, but the evidence it's scattered all through literature and personal accounts from the Middle Ages. People wrote letters, read psalms, whispered to spouses, even tended livestock, all in this strange, in-between midnight window. For you, it's time to stare at the low ceiling beams and wonder why you can still taste that turnip stew from dinner. You shift slightly, trying not to wake your brother. He's still dead asleep, mumbling something about bread in his dreams. You watch the faint outline of the rafters in the dark, lit only by the vaguest moonlight seeping in through a crack in the shutter. You don't get up, not yet. There's no real urgency. That's what makes this period so odd by modern standards. It's not insomnia. No one's worried about getting back to sleep. In fact, no one talks about it like a problem. This middle-of-the-night wakefulness is expected, normal, even welcomed. Some people use it to pray, others to think. A few even steal a moment of privacy to sneak out and, shall we say, visit a neighbor. That's not your style. Mostly. You just lie there and enjoy the rare moment where nothing is required of you. It's quiet in the room. The kind of quiet that buzzes. You can hear your own heartbeat. A soft creak. The whistle of the wind nudging the wall. A distant owl calls once. Bored and solitary. You remember what your father says about the watch time, that it's when your thoughts are clearest, when God listens closest, when the world is paused, waiting for the next breath. That's why monks wake to pray at this hour. That's why herbalists rise to stir potions. That's why, if you were in a castle, you might hear soft footsteps of a servant making their way to a mistress's chamber. Everything happens slower now, softer. The fire's gone cold, but the ashes still glow faintly. You rise quietly and shuffle over, grabbing the iron poker with fingers that wince at the chill. You stir the coals gently, not to make a fire, just to warm your hands. The red embers brighten for a moment, revealing your small corner of the world, clay mugs on the shelf, a wooden spoon, the slumped figure of your mother curled near the pig. You don't make a sound. This is a sacred moment. The house isn't asleep. It's holding its breath. Modern sleep scientists would call this biphasic sleep. You don't have a name for it. It's just how nights work. Somewhere deep in your bones, your body is sinking to the light. Candles are too expensive to waste at this hour, so you work with what the moon gives you. Just enough to see shapes, shadows, outlines of lives tucked under cloth and hay. A candle would cost you a day's wages. You don't light one unless someone's dying, or giving birth, or possibly both. You sit by the hearth and wrap your cloak tighter. It still smells like sheep, but at least it's warm. You lean your back against the stones and let your thoughts drift. You think about the day ahead, about the ox with the bad hoof, about the taxes due to the manor, about the patch of roof that needs thatching before next rain, but also about nothing. Just drifting, Some peasants use this time to tell stories. Others sing softly to themselves. You hum a tune your grandmother taught you, one that doesn't need words. Here's a quirky tidbit in some areas. It was said that the time between first and second sleep was when spirits roamed most freely. The line between the waking world and the other was thin, if you dreamed during this time. It mattered. Some families even kept a dream book, scraps of parchment or spoken records where they'd track portents. Yours doesn't. But you remember the stories. You lie back down, facing the fire's last breath. The baby is stirring, not crying, just shifting. Your father coughs once and settles again. You close your eyes. The first sleep was functional, your body gave out. This second sleep, it's almost voluntary, softer, gentler. You're already relaxed, already halfway back into the dream world. Your thoughts flit like leaves on a stream. You remember a cow's soft nose, a warm sunbeam through barn slats, the feeling of bare feet in warm mud. You're not asleep, but you're not fully here either. There's something deeply human about this, something ancient. Your body, untethered from clocks, knows exactly what to do. The strange thing, you'll wake up at dawn feeling rested, even though you split the night, even though you spent an hour sitting by cold embers. In fact, people used to write that the second sleep was the better one. More vivid dreams, more peace, more depth. Modern science backs this up. Some studies suggest this phase is rich in REM sleep, the stage where dreams bloom. You don't know about REM. You just know you'll probably dream about bread again. You turn over and pull your knees to your chest. The fire gives one last pop. The owl is silent now. Even the wind has decided to sleep. So do you. When the morning comes, it doesn't announce itself with a glowing alarm or a cheery song from your smartphone. It starts with the faintest glow, more gray than gold, edging through the window's wooden shutter like an apology. You blink awake slowly, not startled, not panicked. Your eyes open as if they've been waiting. The straw beneath you is damp in patches from the cold night air, and your tunic has bunched up uncomfortably at the hip. But none of that matters. You slept. Twice. In fact, and better than most people do in your century. You sit up and stretch your arms overhead, feeling each vertebra in your back argue its case. You've earned every creak. You listen, the pigs already awake, snuffling near the door. Your brother mutters in his sleep, swats at an invisible fly. The house begins to stir, slow as a rising fog. It's cold. Always is. You reach for your outer cloak and throw it over your shoulders, a familiar scratchiness. It's not washed often, just beaten with a stick and hung over smoke to freshen. You don't care. It's warm. And that's the only metric that counts. You glance down at your sleeping setup and smile grimly. The bed, if it can even be called that. A tick mattress, just a rough linen sack stuffed with straw or heather. Nothing like the ornate four-posters of the gentry. You've heard stories about those feather beds, silk sheets, velvet canopies. You don't even know what velvet feels like. You're not sure you ever will. Still, even the worst mattress says something about you. In the medieval world, your bed is a marker of status. Not so much what it is, but what it isn't. Nobles get frames, curtains, canopies. You get a corner. nobles sleep raised off the floor to avoid rats and drafts. You are the draft. Historians still debate whether peasants aspired to imitate noble sleeping habits or leaned into their own more utilitarian culture. But one thing's clear, beds weren't just for rest, they were symbols. Even a lump of straw had meaning. You rise and begin rolling the tick into a heap. It can't stay out during the day. The same corner it sits in will become a dining spot by breakfast, a workspace by lunch, and probably the place your sister drops a basket of kindling in by mid-afternoon. Your bedroom is every room. You tie the mattress up with rope and push it into the wall niche, dusting off your hands. In some households, people hang bedding on pegs or rafters to air it out. In winter, it's left curled in a pile, soaking up hearth smoke and whatever warmth can be spared. Luxury is efficiency. Here's a fun read. Horrifying fringe fact for your sleepy brain. Some peasants used to share mattresses not just with family, but with traveling strangers, called bed rights. You might have to make room for a pilgrim or hired laborer passing through. The logic, heat conservation. Human-shaped hot water bottles. You never knew their name. But hey, at least their feet were warm. This morning, thankfully, no strangers are curled beside you, as the rest of the house stirs to life. You eye your cloak again. It's not just for wearing, it's also your blanket. There are no down comforters here. No weighted blankets or memory foam, anything. In fact, there's a good chance that if you do have a blanket, it was handed down from someone long dead. Maybe more than one person. The textile trade is expensive. A single wool blanket could cost more than a cow. That's why people sleep in layers, tunic over shift, cloak over tunic. Maybe a second cloak if you're lucky. You wear your warmth. And here's where things get itchy, literally. Your bedding isn't just for you. It's a community, a thriving metropolis of lice, bed bugs, and the occasional flea circus. You've scratched so much in your sleep that you have little red bites along your ankles. That's not a hygiene failure. It's life. Soap is rare. Baths are a luxury. Lice are inevitability. You don't complain. No one does. Well, except that one neighbor with the special ointment who swears her bed is pest-free. But no one believes her. Especially not her kids, who scratch more than anyone. Your mother's up now, feeding the fire with twigs. She drops a handful of dried moss into the hearth it catches quickly, snapping and flaring like it's angry to be useful. She doesn't look at you, but you hear her humming, a little song from her childhood, probably inherited from her mother. And her mother before that. You nod in her direction. Words aren't necessary. Breakfast will be soup, or barley mash, or cold bread if you're lucky. You'll eat it sitting near the same spot you slept. Legs crossed, sharing a single spoon between 3 people. But you know what? You'll be ready for the day. Because even though your bed was straw, your blanket a wool sack, and your sleeping companions a symphony of snoring and livestock, you slept. And you'll sleep again tonight, because medieval life demands that you do. Sleep isn't a luxury. It's a tool, a shield, a quiet rebellion against a hard life. Modern sleep comes with apps, trackers, white noise machines. Yours comes with exhaustion and familiarity. There's something almost honest about that. before the fire finishes warming the room. You head outside to fetch water. Your breath puffs like a ghost in the cold, and you already start thinking tonight. Same straw, same blanket, same snores. And somehow, it's enough. It's enough. It's enough. It's enough. You step outside, and the air punches your lungs with that sharp, wet cold only a medieval morning can provide. No dew-kissed serenity here, just a slap of reality in the face. Your bare feet sting against the packed dirt as you walk toward the well, passing the barn where the rooster is already clearing his throat. You don't yawn. Yawning wastes heat. The sun hasn't risen yet, but a hint of pale silver lines the horizon. You nod to the neighbor trudging by with a bucket. Wrapped in so many layers he resembles a mobile haystack. You both grunt your mutual misery in acknowledgement. He looks as tired as you feel. You haul water, carefully balancing the sloshing bucket against your hip. The cold leaks through the wood and numbs your skin. But as the steam of your breath curls upward, something odd happens. You start to feel awake. Really awake. In that gritty bodily way that only comes from surviving a night inside and facing a morning outside. By the time you re-enter your home, your hands have gone pink with cold. You splash a bit of water over your face, no soap. Just icy encouragement, and begin helping your mother stir whatever counts as breakfast. You don't need much. You just need something warm. Afterward, the day swallows you whole. Hours of field work, hauling, sewing, mending, feeding, scraping. A rhythm so exhausting, so completely physical, that your bones count a time better than any clock. You don't stop for lunch. You barely stop for breath. And then, as the sun starts to bow toward the horizon, a strange awareness creeps into your muscles. You're already looking forward to sleep. But that's tonight. Right now, you've got a problem. Wind. The thatched roof has started whispering again, those dry, papery noises that hint something is about to come loose, which wouldn't be so bad, except that when the wind howls through the eaves at night, it feels like fingers scraping across your spine. And if the wind finds a gap, it's like sleeping with your head in an icebox. You remember last winter, when the wind got under the rafters and sent the snowflakes drifting down like feathers from a very cold and vengeful angel. You and your brother tried to sleep under a cart, draped with an old sail. It didn't help. You both woke with noses too numb to sneeze. That's why tonight's prep is important. You start tacking bits of cloth to the gaps between wall and beam. Rags, old skirts, a torn bit of sail. Anything to keep the wind from entering like an uninvited guest. Your mother, meanwhile, checks the firewood. You'll need to burn slow and low tonight, enough heat to survive. Not enough to ignite the house. A careful balance. The hearth is life, but it's also death, if mishandled. Wind in the medieval world isn't just weather. It's a force, an entity, a character in your life story. It howls like a drunk god. It tests the sturdiness of your roof and your will. Historians still argue whether peasant homes were truly drafty, beyond what was needed for ventilation, or if the horror stories come more from noble prejudice than lived reality. But you don't need an academic citation to know this place breathes. whether you want it to or not. You double layer your bedding tonight, not because it's colder, but because the wind sounds colder. That psychological chill, the kind that makes you curl inward just to remember what your own heartbeat feels like. The chickens are already roosting in the corner. They cluck softly in their dreams. You used to find them annoying. Now, they're comfort-feathered proof that you're not alone. Your father enters last, muttering about the wind like it's an old enemy. He checks the door latch, then the tiny window, stuffing a bit of moss into a fresh crack. You all do your part. Sleep isn't something you fall into. It's something you build, brick by brick. Every evening, dinner is over. Bellies are fullish. The fire has dimmed to coals. The family gathers near it like planets around a dying sun. You wrap yourself in your cloak, tuck your feet under the pig, and pull the cloth over your nose. The wind moans, the pig grunts, and still you sleep, not out of comfort, out of sheer, glorious exhaustion. It's a sleep you've earned with every ache in your body. A sleep that doesn't care if you're comfortable. A sleep that arrives because your muscles cry for it louder than your thoughts. Here's a quirky bit of trivia in some parts of rural Europe. Families believed the wind could carry spirits if your window faced the wrong direction. Bad dreams would ride the breeze right in. Some nailed charms above the door. Others placed iron near their beds. You have a rock you picked up from a blessed field. You sleep with it tucked inside your straw mattress, near your heart, just in case. You've never told anyone. The house creaks and sighs as the wind tests its bones. A stray gust pushes through a crack and makes the candle flicker. Everyone looks up. Your sister frowns and whispers something about goblins. You don't laugh, not because you believe her, but because the night has its own logic. And in the dark, logic bends. You sleep anyway, wrapped in rags, surrounded by chickens, listening to the wind snarl outside, because inside, you've made a bubble of warmth, of survival, of family, and somehow, in this impossible space, sleep comes tonight. The sun sinks quickly. It doesn't linger with a sunset show or stretch the day out in a golden yawn. It drops behind the trees like a stone, and with it, the village folds into shadow. You're already home, barefoot and muddy, with your hands raw from pulling weeds and your shoulders singing a familiar tune of soreness. The sky turns from dusty blue to pewter gray, and then just vanishes. You don't think of it as nightfall. It's more like the world closing its eyes. There are no street lamps, no glowing windows, just a few household fires throwing orange light onto the packed earth outside, and a faint glimmer from someone's candle stub. This isn't darkness the way you know it today. This is full-bodied black, thick, quiet, absolute, and with that, sleep draws near. But not yet. There's one more ritual to complete the curfew. You hear the bell first distant, but clear from the church tower a mile away. It clangs once, then again. Not the time-telling kind. This is the cover feu, the cover the fire bell, a public reminder to extinguish your flames or bank them low before bed, the origin of our word curfew. Believe it or not, a communal bedtime for a society where fire can be both savior and saboteur. You glance at your hearth. The flames are already licking low, and you take the iron shovel and pile a little ash over the embers. It keeps them alive, just barely, ready to stir again in the morning without striking flint anew. You've heard horror stories of houses lost to an ember that escaped. Nobody wants to be the reason half the village burns while everyone sleeps. There's another reason you keep the fire low candles. You don't have any tonight. A candle costs more than a loaf of bread. Wax is precious. Tallow stinks. So most nights, unless someone's dying or giving birth or both. Honestly, you go without. You go dark. Historians still argue whether candles were more common in peasant homes than we assume. But even if you had one, you wouldn't waste it lighting the room just to see your own feet. So, you do what everyone does. You chase the sun's schedule. When it sleeps, you sleep. When it rises, you rise. It's not optional. It's biology and economy. The cloth shutter is drawn over the tiny window now, held closed with a bit of twine and a wooden peg. The room is lit by fire glow and nothing else. Your sister mumbles a few final words to the Virgin, as she does every night. You repeat the same prayer under your breath, not because you're especially devout, but because prayers are how you finish things. Days, thoughts, lives. You glance at the fire one last time and wrap yourself in your cloak. The pig sighs. Someone coughs. A baby murmurs in its sleep. And that's it. The village is silent. There's no nightlife, no tavern music in the distance, no carriages clattering past. Just the wind, and the occasional night bird too bored to sleep. You lie back on your straw tick and press your feet against the warmth of a sibling already halfway to dreamland. You let your eyes close. It's funny, this room is crowded, overcrowded, loud, claustrophobic. But somehow, it's safer in here than outside, because the dark out there isn't empty. It's full of things you can't name. Wolves, thieves, witches, worse. Everyone knows someone who knew someone who disappeared in the dark. So, yes, you put up with the snoring and the foot kicking your ribs and the pig rolling over on your arm. Because here, you're together. Here, no one has to sleep alone. That's the real curfew. Not the fire, not the light. It's the boundary between danger and safety. Inside warmth, whispers, breath, outside wind and wolves. You whisper goodnight to no one in particular, and no one answers. But everyone hears it. You let your mind drift as you slide into sleep. Not fast, not slow, just naturally. Like a pebble sinking in a stream. And while you do, here's a quirky note to drift on some medieval towns actually employed a bellman or night walker who patrolled the streets after curfew. His job: to keep an eye out for fires and crimes, but also to make sure people weren't up to no good after hours. If you were outside too long after dark, you'd be questioned, if not outright punished. A medieval bedtime enforcer. Imagine that today getting stopped by the sleep police for scrolling past midnight. No thanks. You're in your rightful place now. Curfew obeyed. Hearth banked. Cloak wrapped. Eyes closed. You breathe out. Deep and slow. The room breathes with you. And again. like every night you sleep. You don't remember falling asleep, but you do remember dreaming. Not the sharp, colorful dreams of modern memory, where things happen in vivid detail. These are misty, symbolic, half-sensed. You walk through fog. You speak with someone whose face is familiar but whose words are not. A sheep bleats in the distance. You wake unsure whether it happened in your mind or just outside the wall. Your second sleep ends slowly. No alarm. No rooster this time. Just the slow swell of light behind your closed eyelids, and the creaking of bodies stretching beside you. A wooden cup rattles. Someone sneezes. And then, with the inevitability of bread going stale, the day begins. You sit up, brushing a bit of straw from your cheek. The tick has shifted again in the night, leaving a ridge that now marks your lower back like a badge of honor. Your legs ache from yesterday, and today promises more of the same. Still, you feel rested, not refreshed exactly, but rested, like a tool that's been laid down carefully and is now ready to be used again. As you fold up your bedding more habit than ceremony, you can't help but glance at the corner where the manor steward's boy once visited. He boasted about how his bed was raised off the ground, stuffed with goose feathers, had wooden sides, even a headboard. You believed him, and you hated him for it. Beds, even the bad ones, matter in the medieval world. They're not just places to lie down. They're status symbols, symbols of lineage, marriage, inheritance, even love when couples married. The gift of a shared bed, sometimes carved. Sometimes just straw was the clearest sign that their union was legitimate and recognized. Historians note that wills and inventories from the Middle Ages often mention beds before almost anything else. A well-made bed could be handed down across generations. A feather bed in your home would be as precious as a mule, maybe more. You've never even touched one. In wealthier homes, beds were ornate structures, 4 posts, curtains to keep out drafts and prying eyes, even wooden canopies painted with saints or stars. In contrast, your bed is more suggestion than furniture, a place the body collapses, not a thing to display. You've heard that nobles even hosted guests in bed fully clothed, seated against cushions, discussing politics over wine. The idea makes you laugh, in your world. A bed is not a place for conversation. It's a place to collapse, to forget for a few hours that you ache, that your stomach grumbles, that tomorrow will repeat today in near identical detail. But even with your straw, your bug-bitten blankets, your pig-snuggled feet, you still have something. You have sleep, honest, uninterrupted, dream-haunted sleep. You carry your tick outside to shake it, beating it lightly with a stick to remove the worst of the night's residue. The wind is still crisp, but there's a promise of spring in the air. The chickens fuss and peck near your feet. A goat bleats from across the fence. You glance up at your neighbor's thatch-roofed house. Her husband died last year, and she's taken to sleeping with their eldest son at one side and the baby tucked beneath her shift. It's the only way to stay warm. No one talks about it. No one has to. Here's a little-known custom you recall in some villages. It was traditional for families to sleep head to toe in one bed, alternating directions, like fish stacked in a barrel. The theory, less face-to-face breathing meant fewer shared illnesses. Or maybe it was just a better way to fit 5 people in a space made for 2. It worked. Mostly. You return inside, dragging your tick behind you. Your mother is already kneading dough. Your father sits on the stool near the hearth, polishing a wooden yoke with a strip of sheep hide. You glance at the fire and feel the slow, creeping warmth on your skin. The tick goes back in its place, waiting for nightfall. You brush your hands together and look around at the others. No one talks about their dreams. Dreams are personal, powerful, occasionally dangerous. Because in this world, dreams are not just the mind's wanderings. They are messages, omens, warnings. You once dreamed of fire, and 2 days later, the hayloft caught a spark. Coincidence? Maybe, but no one treated it like one. People around here talk about dreams the way others talk about weather important. Changeable and full of meaning. You hear rumors that in some noble households, dream interpreters are paid to sit beside the bed and listen to what their lord mutters in his sleep. That seems absurd to you. But then again, you mutter too. Historians still debate how seriously peasants treated dream interpretation. Some claim it was superstition. Others say it was woven into daily life. A second language understood instinctively. You know this when you dream of running water. Your mother makes you sleep with rosemary under your pillow the next night. When you dream of wolves, you pray. And when you dream of your grandmother gone these 5 winters, you tell no one. You keep that to yourself. Quiet as snow falling on a chapel roof. The day wears on, and as you haul wood and scrape your fingernails clean with a sliver of bone, the memory of the dream fades. Just a shape now, a feeling. But it leaves something behind. A heaviness in your chest, a strange comfort, like a secret you've almost shared. The fire crackles behind you as the sun creeps upward. You already feel it, the long pull of the day to come, and the promise of another sleep at its end. Tonight, same straw, same sack, same cloak, and maybe, just maybe, another dream, another dream, another dream. You're halfway through the morning when your stomach begins to complain. There's no breakfast rush in your world, just the slow unraveling of hunger as you work. Maybe a crust of bread earlier, soaked in ale or water if it was too tough to chew. But that's gone now. You're kneeling in the dirt, planting peas in a crooked row. And the cold has worked its way into your bones in a way even movement can't shake loose. Then it hits you, that slow, creeping awareness in your bladder. You try to ignore it, but medieval food isn't exactly high in fiber, and what little you drink tends to pass through quickly, especially when you're out here, squatting between rows of dirt, far from any privacy. So, you excuse yourself quietly, slip behind the old tool shed, and take care of it. Welcome to the medieval bathroom experience, which, spoiler alert, does not involve indoor plumbing, privacy, or hand soap. At night, it's even worse when the fire's banked, the doors bolted, and everyone's piled on the ground like firewood. Nature doesn't care that you're snuggled beneath 3 layers of wool and pig breath. You wake up needing to go. You know what's waiting the chamber pot. It sits in the farthest corner of the room, or sometimes right beside the hearth. depending on how desperate people were the last time someone used it. It's usually a squat clay bowl or maybe a battered wooden bucket with a lid if you're fancy. Yours has no lid. You think it may have once belonged to a dog. And when the need comes, you get up, quietly, carefully. You pray you don't step on anyone. You pray you don't kick the pig. You pray that when you reach for the pot, no one is using it already. Yes, that happens. The floor is cold. The air bites. You don't light a candle. It's not worth the cost or the risk. You move by memory, shadow, and the occasional stubbed toe. This is your medieval nighttime routine. No bathroom, no flush. Just you, your chamber pot, and a silent prayer that it doesn't tip over. You squat, you aim, you hope. The pig stirs. Your brother mutters in his sleep. You exhale slowly. Relief. And then comes the question where to empty it. Because no one wants to sleep near a full pot. In the morning, you, or more likely. The youngest child carries the pot outside and tosses its contents into the dung heap. The moat if you live near one, or the alley that serves as a communal dumping ground in cities. They shout "Gardy-loo" before tossing waste from the window. You don't shout. There's no one to warn. You just tip the pot over the edge of the pigsty and rinse it out with a bit of gray water from the laundry barrel. Historians still argue whether all households used chamber pots, or if some just made the dash to the field or latrine each night. But one thing is certain, your relationship with bodily needs is far more practical, far less private than what future centuries will enjoy. Still, there's a sort of brutal efficiency to it. You go, you return, you sleep. If you're lucky, you don't knock it over in the dark. Fringe fact for you, some medieval folks believed that spirits could slip in through the chamber pot at night. A hole in the house, so to speak. They'd cover it with cloth, place a charm above it, or position it far from where children slept. You don't have a charm. You have a rock. Again, just in case. Back in bed, you curl back into your cloak, trying to find the warm spot you left behind. It's still there. Barely. You nestle into it like a cat curling in ashes. You press your eyes closed and try not to think about the pot. The pot is part of your life. Like straw. Like wind. Like cold feet and aching shoulders. You don't complain. You adapt. The rhythm of your sleep isn't gentle. It's practical. Wake. Sleep. Wake again. And even your waking is surrounded by rituals. Pot. Fire. Silence. Return. The house settles again. The air warms with each breath exhaled by those around you. You fall back asleep, and when morning returns in its dim gray hush, you stretch your legs, and your foot hits the pot. Of course, it hasn't been emptied yet. You grumble under your breath and pull the cloak over your head. You'll deal with it later, because right now, sleep is still an option. And in your world, that's not something you waste, by now. The scent of herbs is thick in the room. Not the fresh snap of modern mint or eucalyptus. No, this is heavier, earthier, a mix of dried valerian root, crushed chamomile, and something sharp that might be wormwood. It wafts from a clay cup near the hearth. where your grandmother has been steeping what she calls her sleep draught. It smells effective. You watch the liquid swirl as she lifts the cup with both hands. She offers it to you without a word. No ceremony. No spoonful of sugar. Just a warm, slightly murky brew that promises to deliver you swiftly to dreams, or, at the very least, to stillness. You take a sip. It's bitter. Coats your tongue in a way that suggests whatever you just drank was dug out of the ground rather than plucked from a garden. Your grandmother nods approvingly. You're not sure if it's because you didn't gag or because she knows you'll be asleep before the fire goes out. In the medieval world, herbs are everything. Medicine, magic, meals, sleep aids. Sleep isn't optional when you labor sunup to sundown, and on days when stress or illness threatens to rob you of it. You reach for what the hedgerow offers. Valerian root, mugwort, lavender, poppy seeds, hops. Historians still debate how widely peasants used herbal sedatives versus spiritual methods like prayer and ritual. But one thing is clear. Herbalism isn't a hobby. It's survival. The knowledge is passed down. Mouth to ear. Herb to hand. You remember helping gather them in summer. Walking barefoot along the edge of the woods. Basket in one hand. Your grandmother's voice in your ear. That one makes the baby sleep. That one makes the pain go quiet. That one. Leave that one alone. She always said sleep was something you invited, not forced. You sit down on the floor by the fire, cloak around your shoulders, and finish the last of the draft. It leaves a bitter trail down your throat, but your body is already leaning into it. Your limbs starting to feel heavy, like the drink has whispered something to your bones. Tonight was supposed to be a restless night. Your sister cried earlier, quietly into her sleeve. Something about a boy, a wedding that's not happening, and your father's foot is acting up again, swollen and red. He won't say it aloud, but everyone knows it means he'll be slower tomorrow. And slow means less work. Less work means less bread. You're not even sure how much stew is left in the pot. But the herbs don't care. They wrap themselves around your thoughts like a second blanket. Not comforting. Exactly. But numbing. Making the edges of your worry go soft. Here's a strange fact to fall asleep on. Hops, the same plant used to brew ale, were also used to stuff pillows. A sort of medieval melatonin, if you will. Some folks would rest their heads on bags filled with dried hops, believing the scent alone could coax sleep. You've tried it. It smells like bread left out too long, but it does make you sleepy. You stretch out on your straw tick and exhale slowly. The room is quiet. The fire's glow flickers on the beams. Your sister is already curled up near the door. Face blotchy but calm. Your mother is whispering prayers in Latin. Too fast to follow. Your father is silent. Sleep is coming. You can feel it. But not just from the draft. It's in the air, in the routine, in the communal knowledge that after so much life crammed into one day, the only thing left is to shut your eyes and stop being awake, somewhere in the shadows. Your grandmother is still awake, humming. She says she dreams better when she's had mugwort. But you remember her saying mugwort also invites dreams you shouldn't see. Historians argue whether that's just folklore, or if certain herbs really do unlock something deeper. You're not in the mood to find out. The draft is pulling at your thoughts now, gently untying them like knots in string. You stop thinking in sentences, just impressions. Heat, cloth, straw, breath. The pig gives a soft snort in the corner. Your brother kicks once, then stills. You let your head rest on the cloth bundle you call a pillow. It smells faintly of thyme. Your grandmother might have snuck some in there, or maybe you've imagined it. You don't care. You're asleep. And the herbs carry you somewhere else. Somewhere soft. Somewhere warm. Somewhere that smells like fields and fire and dreams you might forget by morning. You wake to a sound that is neither sharp nor sudden, but deeply familiar. A long, ragged exhale from somewhere in the room, followed by the unmistakable crescendo of a snore. Then another, then a wheeze, and then a cough. The kind that sounds like it's been held in all day and only now, under the cover of sleep, is allowed to erupt freely. Welcome to your medieval lullaby, the symphony of shared sleep. You shift slightly, careful not to rattle your straw too loudly. Every corner of the room is occupied now. Your little sister sleeps with one leg halfway across your mother's back. Your father lies on his side, hand twitching with some unseen dream, and from just beyond the hearth. Your grandfather's breathing begins to falter again before lurching back into motion like a poorly wound clock. It's comforting and also maddening. This is communal sleep. There's no concept of a bedroom here. No shutting the door for silence. You're lucky if you even have a shutter to block the wind. You sleep where you can fit. You sleep how you must. And you sleep with everyone else. Historians still debate the actual layouts of peasant homes, whether families had designated sleeping corners or just a pile and collapse strategy. But regardless of the floor plan, one thing is certain: no one slept alone. Not unless they had the plague, or were a hermit. The sounds of sleep are as much a part of your night as your own breath. The snoring, the coughing, the muttered dreams. You've learned to tune them out like rain on a thatched roof. But sometimes, just sometimes, they harmonize. Your grandfather's snores rise and fall like the tide. Your mother's soft prayer murmurs run just underneath, like a river under frost. Even the pig contributes with low, satisfied grunts somewhere across the room. Your cousin lets out a hiccuped snore that ends in a sharp whistle. You smile. The sound is absurdly human. And then there are the prayers. Not loud, not public, not shouted from pulpits. These are whispered, mumbled like secrets. Your older brother speaks Latin in his sleep not because he's holy, but because he once served at the priory and memorized a few psalms. He says them now, half aware, as though they're stitched into his bones. Your mother mutters the same prayer each night. Keep us safe from fire, from fever, from night spirits. It's not from a book. It's just hers. A mantra passed down, maybe invented, maybe older than the language it's spoken in. Prayer, in the medieval world, isn't confined to chapels and rituals. It bleeds into every space, especially where you're most vulnerable. Sleep is one of those places, because in sleep you are defenseless, dreams might be divine, or they might not be. And so you pray, or someone prays for you. Here's a strange, often overlooked tidbit. Many people in the Middle Ages believed that the devil whispered temptations into your ear during sleep. That a soul, while resting, could be led astray, seduced by false visions, frightened by illusions, or even visited by demons disguised as lost relatives. That's why some families placed a crucifix above the bed, or, if they couldn't afford one, a piece of blessed bread or a sprig of rosemary under the mattress. You have a bundle of dried lavender tucked in your tunic. Blessed once by a friar who couldn't pronounce your name, it smells faintly sweet and dusty. You keep it there just in case, because tonight your dreams might mean something. And so you drift, even with the noise. You fall asleep to the rhythm of your family breathing, your people, your pack. There's something deeply grounding in that, knowing that you're not the only one lost in the dark. That if a fire broke out, or a wolf scratched at the door, you wouldn't face it alone. You'd all leap up at once, like limbs of the same body. You're not afraid to sleep in this chaos, because chaos means life. Snoring means lungs that work. Coughing means the chest still rises. Whispers mean someone remembers the words. And if someone forgets the words, well, you remember them for them. You roll onto your side and press your face into the fabric bundle that pretends to be a pillow. The cloth smells faintly of smoke and milk. You try not to think about how many people have used it before you. You listen to the noises. You feel yourself slipping under again. This time, the dream comes quickly. You're in a field. No tools in your hands. No burden on your back. The sun is warm. Your feet are bare. And someone is singing nearby. You can't see them, but the voice is low and kind. And best of all, the silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of safety. You smile in your sleep, even as your grandfather lets out a wheeze that could wake the dead. Even as someone else turns over and knocks the pot. Even as the pig begins to snore louder than anyone. You sleep because in this room, no one ever sleeps alone. Sleeps alone. Sleeps alone. You open your eyes. The room is dark again. But it's not quite night. Just the long, gray hush that comes after a full day's labor and before the embers have gone out. Your hands ache. Your legs feel like they belong to someone else. You're sprawled half out of your straw tick. The pig has stolen your warm spot, and your brother is currently drooling onto your sleeve. You smile. Barely. This is what it means to be tired in the medieval world. Not the tired of scrolling until 2 a.m. Not the tired of a long commute. This is the tired that comes from work so physical, so unrelenting, that your body becomes just another tool, something used, worn, and finally dropped. You didn't climb into bed. You collapsed into it, like a sack of flour tipped off a shelf. You didn't brush your teeth. You didn't change clothes. You didn't meditate or listen to ocean sounds. You just lay down, curled into yourself, and waited for sleep to swallow you. Because it will. Because it always does. You worked until your limbs begged you to stop. And then you kept working. You hauled wood. You sharpened tools. You lifted, bent, scraped, and stirred. Your entire day was built on motion, some slow, some sharp but always endless. The medieval peasant didn't count calories, but if someone did, they'd find you burn somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 a day. Depending on the season, you haven't seen a mirror in weeks, but you know your body by feel lean, strong, sore, calluses thick on your palms, knees that don't straighten fully anymore. Historians often wonder how peasants survived such brutal physical routines. The answer, ironically, might be sleep. Not long hours, not luxury, but depth, consistency. The body obeys its own limits. When the sun sets, your brain doesn't ask questions. It turns off. You don't lie awake pondering your life decisions. You don't wonder what tomorrow holds. You already know more of this, and that knowledge, weirdly, soothes you. No decisions, no options, just sleep. And because your muscles have been ringing like a struck bell all day, that sleep comes quickly, fully, deeply. Fringe fact for the road to dreamland in some medieval guilds. Apprentices were forced to sleep on the workshop floor not as punishment, but as training. The idea was to toughen the bones and build loyalty to the trade. You think of that now, as you curl on straw beside a squeaky floorboard, and wonder if you're halfway to being a blacksmith. There's a strange kind of peace in exhaustion, not joy exactly, but clarity. When you're this tired, the body stops arguing with itself. It just is. A working machine finally shut down for repairs. No overthinking, no buzzing thoughts, no second guessing. You just breathe. And when you do dream, if you dream, it's often simple. A warm loaf of bread, a well-fed cow, a bath that isn't cold, a hand reaching out and brushing your hair back. Maybe none of those things will happen, but your mind offers them anyway, a nightly reward or distraction. Sometimes, in your dreams, you run, not away, just because you can. No weight on your back, no tools in your hands, just speed, just the wind. You haven't run like that in years. Sometimes you dream of flying, and sometimes you dream of nothing. The pure, empty blackness of unconscious sleep, where even your bones forget they exist. And when you wake, when the fire has burned to ash, and your fingers are stiff with cold, you rise not because you're ready, but because you have to. But even then, sleep lingers. It leaves behind a trace, like the warmth of a body after it's left to the bed. You carry that comfort into the day. You have to, because without it, you wouldn't last long. Modern folks like to joke about crashing into bed. You don't crash. You fall, like a stone in a pond. No splash, just depth and silence. You wake up to a sound that's not unusual, but still entirely unhelpful. Cluck, scratch, cluck, followed by a low, grumbling "herf" from the corner. You crack an eye open, and there, not 2 feet from your face, is a chicken. She's standing calmly on a low stool that used to hold a bowl of parsnips, staring directly at you like she's about to issue a complaint, somewhere near the hearth. The pig shifts her bulk and snorts in agreement. It's another typical morning in your medieval home, and your bedroom, kitchen, and barnyard are still the same room. You sit up, blinking away the fog of sleep. Around you, people are beginning to stir. Your sister yawns into a bundle of cloth. Your uncle, who came by after his cart broke an axle yesterday, snores so violently it sounds like the roof is coming down, and the chicken hops down and pecks your foot. Good morning. You live with your animals, literally, not just on the same land, but inside the same space. The family pig is practically furniture. The chickens come and go like particularly unhelpful roommates. You've even had a goat sneak in during a storm and sleep beside the hearth. Historians are mostly in agreement on this point. Animals and humans shared indoor space, especially in peasant homes. It wasn't just practical, it was essential. Animals provided warmth in winter, acted as living alarms, and were too valuable to leave exposed to thieves or wolves. Sure, your house smells like a farmyard and sounds like a barn at 3 a.m. But on the nights when frost glitters on the inside of your window shutters, the warm body of a pig is the difference between shivering and sleeping. There's a rhythm to it, a strange intimacy. You know your animals by sound. You recognize the chicken that clicks her beak before settling down, the pig that grumbles if the fire goes too low, the way the goats sigh like disappointed old men when rain taps on the roof. And you sleep through it all, because this is what sleep is in your world. Not silent, not sterile, not private. It's tangled up in the sounds of life, feet scuffling, fire crackling, livestock breathing, someone coughing, someone mumbling about turnips in their sleep. A strange fact for your sleepy thoughts in many medieval inventories. Pigs are listed right alongside furniture, not just livestock, but bed partners, noted as sleeping near the hearth or beside the owners. One such record refers to the warming pig, almost like a weighted blanket with hooves. You wish she'd stay on her side of the room, though her snout is dangerously close to your bedding. You rise and begin to fold away the tick again, shaking straw loose into the corner. A hen flaps past your head. Offended by your sudden motion, your mother chuckles and shoos it toward the door, which is still closed. The chicken pecks the wall in protest. In other parts of the world, you've heard some families kept dogs in the same roll guard, blanket, companion. But your family can't afford a dog that doesn't also earn its keep. Pigs you can eat. Chickens give eggs. Dogs just bark and shed. So, unless you're a shepherd, they stay outside or not at all. But even outside the practical reasons, there's comfort in shared space. You've never once slept alone in your life, even when sick. Someone is always nearby, whispering, watching, praying, or just breathing. You don't know what silence feels like. You imagine it would be terrifying. There's a scholarly debate still unresolved about whether this communal living bred closeness or tension, whether peasants were emotionally bonded through proximity or silently driven mad by the constant togetherness. The truth. Probably both. You love your family, and you've fantasized about throttling them in their sleep. It's a balance. But when night falls and the wind starts up and the moon hides its face behind clouds, you're thankful. Thankful for the pig. Thankful for the noisy chickens. Thankful for the snoring uncle. Because all of them remind you you're not alone. And that may be the most effective sleep aid of all. You curl back onto your bedding for a stolen moment before the morning truly begins. Just long enough to rest your head again. The chicken is preening beside the hearth. The pig has returned to her snoring. Someone is softly singing a morning hymn as they stir the ashes, and you let your eyes drift closed, just for a breath more, a breath in a room filled with life. You lie there, not quite asleep again, but not fully awake either. When you feel it, that tickle at the base of your spine, the one that has nothing to do with hay or cold or even the pig's snout. It's dread, because you remembered the story, the one your uncle told last week, the one about the thing in the rafters. You blink your eyes open and stare into the dim thatch above, watching shadows dance as the fire breathes its last. You're not alone in this moment. Everyone else is here, curled and snoring and muttering, but suddenly, that doesn't comfort you. It's too quiet, too still, because the medieval night isn't just for sleep. It's for superstition. Outside, a tree creaks, the shutter trembles, something shifts in the dark. You pull the blanket tighter around your shoulders. You try to convince yourself it's just the wind, but your brain has other plans. In your world, belief walks beside you every day, and at night, it creeps ahead, laying out paths of fear, folklore, and flickering doubts. You know the stories everyone does. The night hag, the fae, the black dog that sits on your chest, the dead aunt who visits in dreams, the child taken and replaced with something that almost looks like your brother. Historians still argue just how widespread these beliefs were among peasants versus clergy or gentry. Some claim most stories were just for scaring children. Others argue they reflected deep-seated worldviews about the spirit realm coexisting with the material world. You don't care about academic arguments right now, because you just heard a noise in the rafters. You freeze. Was it the house settling, a rat, or something else? You don't want to know. Here's a delightful fringe fact to keep your eyelids wide open in some parts of Europe. It was common to keep iron scissors or nails under your pillow to ward off evil spirits. You don't own scissors, but you do have a bent nail you found near the fence post. It's in your tunic pocket, next to the lavender, because the stories say the things in the dark don't just hurt you. They steal your sleep. The haggard woman that crouches on your chest, pinning you down. The shapeshifter that whispers your name until you dream of drowning. The owl outside that calls not for mice, but for you. You curl tighter. Try to focus on the warmth, the sound of your brother's breathing, the pig's occasional grunt, the dying hiss of the fire. You remind yourself that you're inside, that the church bell will toll in a few hours, that you've done this 100 times. But still, you wait. Still, listening. Even now. Even half a millennium later. Some scholars think the medieval fear of night was baked directly into the architecture of the mind, with no electricity, no reliable candles, and no understanding of what caused nightmares or sleep paralysis. Night became a playground for everything unknown. When someone died in their sleep, and no one knew why. The explanation was never heart failure or stroke. It was the mare, the demon that sat on your chest. The root of our word, nightmare. You've never seen her, but tonight you feel her watching. Eventually, your grandmother stirs. She rises slowly, lighting a stub of a candle. just enough to find her way to the pot. Her movement cuts the tension, breaks the spell. The room is still ordinary, still small, still filled with breathing, snoring, coughing life. You sigh softly. You're fine. Just a story, a shadow. You roll back over, pressing your back to the wall. The cool stone is reassuring, solid, real. You breathe in the straw-sweet air. Try not to think about what might still be rustling in the rafters. And close your eyes. Because here's the truth. Fear or no fear, dawn is coming. Work waits, and your body knows the rhythm better than your mind ever could. You'll sleep again, not because you're brave, but because you're tired, and tired always wins, even over goblins. For goblins, you dream again. But this time, it's not of running or warmth or bread. It's strange, vivid, almost too vivid. You're in a forest that feels both familiar and impossibly tall. The trees are twisted in ways they shouldn't be. The wind moves without sound. You're walking barefoot, always barefoot toward something glowing in the distance. Then your grandmother is there, except she's younger or older. You can't tell. Her lips move, but there's no sound. She points behind you. You turn and you wake, eyes open, still breathing, but your heart racing like a cart horse. And you don't know why. Dreams mean something here. Always have. You lie still, trying to remember it all, afraid the images will slide off your brain like water off oiled parchment. The glowing thing, the trees, your grandmother's face. What was she pointing at? In the medieval world, dreams are a language, and everyone thinks they can speak it, but no one really agrees on what it means. You sit up slightly and glance at the fire. The coals are low, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. Your sister's face is tucked into a cloak beside you. The pig is snoring again, perfectly content. You wish you could ask someone about the dream, but it's not always safe to speak them aloud. You've heard stories too many to laugh at of dreams being seen as messages. From God, from devils, from the dead. Sometimes, dreams lead people to treasure. Other times, to the gallows. It all depends who hears them and who's doing the telling. Historians still debate whether peasants actually believed their dreams were divine in origin or simply used them as storytelling tools, like a kind of nighttime theater. But in your experience, people treat dreams with more care than they treat most memories. You lie back down, eyes wide now, not frightened, just alert. What was that dream? Was it a warning? A memory? Or worse, was it just nonsense? You hope not, because in this world, nonsense is dangerous. It can't be explained, and if it can't be explained, someone might blame you for it. Here's a fringe tidbit to file away before sleep comes again in some medieval trial records. Dreams were used as testimony. Visions of someone stealing grain, of a neighbor meeting with devils, even of priests secretly worshiping the wrong god. People swore by their dreams, and sometimes people died because of them. You're not about to make that mistake. You press your lips shut. Let the dream melt away. The second sleep approaches now heavier than the first. This one doesn't ask questions. This one doesn't wait for permission. This is the sleep that comes after firelight, after fear, after fragments of glowing forests and whispering grandmothers. You curl in tighter. Breathe slower. Let the weight of the room settle back over you like another blanket. You tell yourself it was just a dream, but you still check your pocket. The nail's still there. Good. Just in case. Tonight is different. Not because the fire burns brighter, or the pig decides to sleep elsewhere she doesn't, or your brother doesn't kick you in the side around midnight he does. No. Tonight is different because it's a feast night, which means one thing: no one's going to bed on time. The sun has long since dipped behind the trees. And still. The cottage is awake, filled with the sounds of laughter, clinking mugs, off-key singing, and the occasional who let the chicken inside again shouted with more amusement than alarm. You sit near the fire, cheeks flushed from warmth and cider. Your belly, for once, feels full, a luxury. There was stew tonight, real stew, with meat, probably rabbit, maybe not. You're choosing not to think too hard about it. The room smells like baked bread, herbs, and too many bodies packed into a space meant for fewer. Even the pig seems unsure where to lie down, spinning in confused circles before flopping beside your uncle's boots with a resigned snort. Sleep is far away, and that's okay. Because on nights like this, rare and celebratory sleep isn't a necessity. It's an afterthought. Something you'll stumble into later, with clothes still on and soot in your hair. Feast nights happen a handful of times a year, saints' days. Harvest celebrations, weddings, births, and the occasional midwinter attempt at cheer through sheer force of food and noise. Tonight it's St. Bridget's Day. The candles were lit, the bread was blessed, and now every household is doing its part to banish winter's grip with fire, song, and full stomachs. Historians often note that feasting among peasants wasn't just about food. It was a spiritual act, a ritual of resistance, when the world gave you so little. Sharing what you had with others became defiance. Generosity wasn't weakness. It was power. You take a sip of something warm and sweet, probably mulled cider with a few herbs tossed in for health. Your grandmother insists it will help you sleep. You suspect she just likes watching everyone get tipsy. Someone begins singing a hymn poorly, and another voice joins in, turning it into something both sacred and silly. You hum along. You don't know all the words, but it doesn't matter. Tonight, everyone is together, and that's what sleep is about, too. Not just the straw mattress or the herbs or the darkness. It's this, the winding down, the slowness that sneaks in after celebration, the moment when laughter fades into soft murmurs. Mugs are emptied, and limbs begin to sag under the weight of food and firelight. One by one, people settle into place, some on the floor, some propped against the wall. One cousin falls asleep with a crust of bread still clutched in his hand. Even the chickens, yes. They're still inside, huddled near the hearth in a feathery heap of warm, fluttery quiet. There's no order to it, no bedtime announcement, just the gradual drift of voices. Then silence. You crawl into your usual corner, still in the same clothes you wore all day. Your legs tangle with someone else's. You don't even check who. It doesn't matter. The fire pops once, quietly. A warm ember glow flickers against the low ceiling. You sigh, long and contented. Sleep creeps in around the edges. Here's a fringe detail worth tucking into your blanket folds in some towns. On feast nights, it was said that dreams carried special meanings, that if you slept with a ribbon from the Bridget's cross beneath your pillow, the saint might grant you a glimpse of the future. You don't have a ribbon, but someone tucked a scrap of braided straw into your cloak earlier. You leave it there, just in case. You close your eyes as the last song fades into nothing. Tonight, sleep doesn't come from exhaustion. It comes from fullness, from warmth, from community, and in the morning, when you wake with a sore back, a dry throat, and a chicken roosting on your foot, you'll still remember this. You slept, not because you had to, but because you could. It's another night now, quieter than the last. No feast, no laughter, just routine. The familiar soft rustle of straw as bodies settle. The dull creak of the wood as someone shifts near the hearth. The murmur of a night prayer half whispered, half remembered. Tonight is what most nights are ordinary. But that's where the secret lies. Because if there's one thing the medieval peasant knows that modern minds often forget, it's this: ordinary is everything. The days are long, the work is hard, and nothing is promised. You live with death nearby illness, accident, poor harvest, taxes that take the coat off your back. You live with a constant thread of uncertainty pulling at the hem of every thought. And yet, you sleep, not because life is easy, but because it must be done. You learned early that resisting sleep is a waste. There's no late-night reading, no bonus hours to get things done. When the work is over and the food is eaten and the fire has been tucked under ash, you lie down and let go. That's the secret. It's not comfort that brings perfect sleep, it's surrender. Your mind doesn't run in circles at midnight because there's nothing left to solve. The day was full, the labor was hard, and tomorrow will be the same. Worry doesn't serve you here. Sleep does. Even when the bed is straw. Even when the pig hogs the warm spot. Even when your brother snores like thunder, and someone has definitely stepped in something outside and tracked it in again. You lie down. You wrap yourself in wool, in routine, in the breath of others. You close your eyes. You sleep. There's another idea worth tucking into your pillow tonight, one that scholars still debate. Some believe that medieval peasants had fewer sleep problems than modern people, not because they were healthier, or happier, or better fed, but because their expectations of sleep were lower. They didn't demand perfect silence, or ergonomic mattresses, or optimized REM cycles. They expected to wake up sore, to share their sleep with noise, with bodies, with discomfort. And so they didn't fear it. They trusted it. The body would sleep when it needed to. No pressure, no drama. You can feel that in your bones as you lie back down. The same sack of straw, the same itchy cloak, the same rhythm of a household falling slowly, completely, into silence. You don't count sheep. You already fed them earlier. You don't need melatonin. You've already earned this sleep. You don't obsess over whether you'll sleep well, because that isn't something to be chased. It's something to accept. And in this moment, you finally understand what your grandmother meant when she said, "We sleep because we're not allowed to stop," and what she didn't say aloud, but what you feel now, like a quiet truth wrapping itself around you. And that's okay. The fire is almost out. The wind is softer tonight. You pull the cloak up over your chin, tucking your toes closer to the pig. She grumbles, but doesn't move. Your brother rolls onto his back and starts snoring immediately. Your mother mutters her usual prayer. You mouth the last word with her. The room breathes in and out. And you, at last, breathe with it. You sleep, and the secret, the real one, is that this noise, this mess, this aching peace is the best sleep you'll ever have, because nothing is expected of it, and everything depends on it. Now, you lie still. The hearth has gone quiet. Its glow only a memory on the wall. Outside, the wind moves through the trees without urgency. A soft hush, like the land itself is sighing. Inside, everything settles. The snoring, the whispering, the creaking wood and rustling straw. All of it fades into a single, gentle rhythm, the pulse of a household at rest, of a world asleep. And in this slow, dim silence, you feel yourself drift, heavier, softer, calmer. No decisions, no movement, no voices calling your name, just warmth, just breath. You think, briefly, of the day ahead, but the thought slips away before it can form, replaced instead by the warmth at your back, the tickle of straw beneath your hand, the scent of wool, of wood smoke, of life lived honestly. And when your mind tries to wander again, when it tries to stir up questions, plans, to-do lists, it finds nothing to cling to, because there's nothing left to do, nothing to prove. You've worked, you've eaten, you've spoken, you've rested, and now, like everyone else in this quiet, flickering world, you sleep, not because the bed is perfect, not because the night is quiet, but because life, in all its hardship and noise, has finally let go of your shoulders. So close your eyes, sink deeper, let the night fold around you like a second skin, and dream. Whatever dreams come, welcome them. This is your time. This is your peace. Sleep well, traveler. Sleep deep. Sleep like a medieval peasant.